Hello everyone, my name is Steve. I want to welcome you to my channel here, and if you've been continued watching, I've actually reviewed the Atari home computer system as well as other things like computer programming languages such as GDK and things. This video is kind of a response to my users and subscribers finding out what kind of things they'd be interested in seeing. So I've been reviewing some videos on YouTube and came across some different types of people and discovered that the Commodore 64 is still a pretty popular system out there, that people are still using it and maybe still buying and getting, deals on eBay, getting to pawn shops or whatever. So I wanted to kind of show you some of the things I've been working on here and see where we can kind of go from there. Basically, I do own an I do own a Commodore 64 system as well. I have all the components necessary, and I can also credit that I do have knowledge of the Commodore 64 pretty close to what I have with the Atari. Maybe not complete grasp on it. I do know basic in assembly, but there's probably some things in the Commodore I may have not learned fully. But if you'd be interested in learning some of that stuff, I'd be happy to share that. Fortunately, unlike the Atari home computer system, I never parted with any of my Commodore stuff, so I have all the original work I ever done, which is a lot of stuff. Now, on the original Atari home computer system I had back in the days of 65XC, and there was a time in my life when I parted with all of the programs I had ever designed from 1990 all the way up to, I think that was like 2004 or 5 or whatever it was. So I lost a lot of things during that time. But, like I said, everything is still complete with the Commodore, so I wanted to kind of use this video to ask questions. First of all, that'll be the first part of this video. If you're interested in Commodore software and wanting to know a little bit more about the Commodore, or maybe basic in assembly, since that's what my channel does mostly focus on, is programming from that aspect. So let's get started on the reviews. I'll just kind of show you, for those who don't know, what the Commodore 64 is and the advantages it had in those days. Obviously, the Commodore 64 is a 64-bit processor system, and it ran on a special type of chipset that was developed by Commodore. I don't have a lot of internal knowledge to give you about the internal components because I wasn't a fanatic over the Commodore 64, which is probably why I left it off my channel, but I can demonstrate what I do know about it. Okay, I'm going to kind of tilt the camera here a little bit. I have no way to really do this, so I can, and it looks like it's going to come out backward if I do it that way. I may have to turn it around. It's backward, I guess. Well, this obviously is the Commodore 64 system. Let me get a second to get this kind of equal with the display here so it doesn't look kind of funny to you. So, it's still crooked on my side. Okay, that's pretty good right there. Okay, so obviously the Commodore 64, like the Atari, had all the keyboard standard with it. You have the F1 through the F7 keys. These can all be programmed automatically in the computer system. If you look underneath here, you'll see the characters underneath it. You can actually access these characters with special control calls inside of BASIC as well as inside of assembly, of course, too. And to basically do that, as I recall, you had to hit the, I believe it was the control key. I think it was a shift key, and you hit the key like that, and it would show whatever was underneath that key. And if you see the one beside it there, I believe that was the one we had to hit the control key. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself on that later, but I haven't pulled out my Commodore in quite a while. This is kind of an introduction to see if people are interested in learning about the Commodore and what I can bring to the table for it. So, to kind of go over the Commodore system itself, obviously it's got a power button. I just noticed I don't have my power supplies with me, but I'll kind of turn this around to the back where you saw it earlier and flip it up a little bit here so you can see. These are the components that actually, this was the cartridge slot right here. We take standard cartridges, 8-bit cartridges in those days. This was the TV switch box. Anybody who's ever familiar with that era knows that you had to basically take your computer and you had to plug it into your television set, and you had to select channel 2 or 3, and this would actually distinguish between that. This is an RF output. This just allows you to connect, in those days, basically take your Commodore and plug it into what's called an RF modulator, which would plug directly into your TV, which communicated the computer graphics internally and transmitted it to your screen. Okay, the next thing here you're seeing, let me kind of tilt this up to make sure I don't correct myself wrong on this. I think this one is probably the power supply. No, the power supply is over here. Oh, one of these are like the I/O ports, basically. This allows you to have, they had two different slots. I don't think there was a difference between them. I noticed by looking at them, they're a little bit slightly different, so I may have to do some research. I do know the one allows you to plug directly into a cable from here to your disk drive, which was I had the 1541, they had the 1541-2 and stuff like that. So this may have been for like I'm gonna guess the modem or something like that. I'll feel really bad if I would get that wrong. Now I did own a printer, but mine didn't actually plug in here. I don't think it did. It's been a long time. Maybe it did here, because I owned a Commodore printer one time, and I guess I did have to plug it in here somewhere, unless it plugged directly in here. I don't see how it could have. But this, I do believe this was either for the printer or the modem output. I noticed that there's two cartridge slots here, and this one's obviously the regular standard. You can tell that by looking at them how different they are. So I'll correct myself later and probably smack myself for getting that one wrong, but like you said, I fortunately was not an expert on all the components of the Commodore, but I wanted to share with you the programming and stuff I've learned through the years on the Commodore. So here on the side you see control port 1 and control port 2. Those are basically where you can take a standard joystick, and if you have one I can actually show you here. This is, well, the camera's not seeing it very well here. This is the Atari joystick in those days. You could just basically plug this unit directly in here. And let me kind of tilt this down so I can put this on the view here and see where the camera's pointing at here. So if I move this here, you'll be able to see it. And you basically take this and you plug it into one of the slots here. What if I could do this blind? If I could do it blindly. And you would basically, this would control joystick 1, and obviously you could just take this back out, wiggle it out, and you could easily move over to the second port here. You have to look at this one right there, and you can plug it into joystick port 2. And both these can be programmed as well, just like the Atari. Okay, and then also here, as I kind of move it up a little bit more, you'll see the on and off switch right here, which basically powered on and off the system. And then you have, of course, the power outlet plug into the wall outlet or whatever. So that's kind of the review for the Commodore 64, from what I can tell you without getting into the programming aspect of things here. And I wanted to kind of move ahead here and show you the disk drive that was required in those days. This one's kind of, I got it off eBay, so it's not the greatest condition. Notice it has some tape here. If I take this off, unfortunately, it's kind of wobbly, so I kind of taped it up in those days. And I think this is my original. If I look at it, you can see some damage to it, so I can definitely tell you this is my original. I never parted with it, like I stated. So kind of move it up here, maybe you can see a little bit better. See, it's the 1541-2. It's got the trademark name and everything, and it's got the power, the LED for the power in the drive as well. And it's pretty solid. Now in the back here, obviously you want to see the I/O stuff. Maybe that's even got my original warranty seal on it. Okay, you've got over here the power on and off switch here for the drive, and then you've got the power supply, and then I think this is the switch. That's just the drive on it. I have to look at it from this angle, or device. That may have been, I never used that one actually. That may have been something to do with, wow. You got me on that one. I'll have to look that one up for sure. The device. I don't know why it's not coming to me now. I never played with it or anything. It might have been something that people used for modems or something. I'm sorry, I don't know that one. But anyways, if you look here, obviously, you'll see the next one in line here. That camera, come on, grab it. It's supposed to be a pretty good camera, they stated. I had those backward, I think. No, okay, power, interface. So here's for the printer, and I do believe that was with the modem. And then serial would plug directly a cable from here into the Commodore. So basically the disk drive could communicate its processing to the computer system. And that's how you were able to upload programs and stuff like that and see the directories on your disks. So those are the two components, obviously. Next thing I wanted to kind of move into here, without going directly into some of the stuff, the programming, I wanted to show you, these are some of the software that I can actually review maybe later on this channel. Some of the software titles I have. This one is actually Kickstart. I won't go into all of them, but there's Three Stooges right here. That one was kind of funny. I got this one on eBay, so it's like the Three Stooges. there were a lot of different games. The Commodore was pretty popular for software in those days. They also had their own graphic operating system, which kind of rivaled the Mac in some way before the Mac came around. Mac always tried to say they were first, but they were not. Apple always tried to state that they were the first in the GUI interface. But here's where it all began, guys. GUS. They actually developed the first GUI operating system. And this is relatively a fact, because Apple came out, I think it was like in 1983 or something, and Commodore was obviously before that, so they had the first GUI operating system. It's possible that Xerox may have had it before that, I don't know, but that's my argument. Okay, and then there's a lot of different software in here. I won't try to pull them out. Just tons of games and stuff. If you were interested in review them, I have like the F-14. It would take too long to really go through all these, but this is all the software that I have. Not all of it, but just a lot of it. And I have my own programs as well. Wanted to kind of pull out a disk here. Let's see. I'm going to pull out one of these discs. I'll just pull it. Yeah, there's an interesting one, the Print Shop. I got this one online too, the Companion Print Shop Companion. To kind of show you, this was a standard format in those days. This is a floppy 5 1/4 inch disc, and you basically would take this and slide it into your disk drive, and it would hum. Your drive would hum, and it would basically read the sectors off of the disk, which allowed information to be transferred into your computer and stuff like that. So I can, I have demos I could really show you on that too later if you're interested in learning about how the floppy drive works. A lot of software did come with the Commodore already. They had their own startup programs, and maybe we'll go into some more of that later. I haven't seen a whole lot on YouTube, and this is again just kind of an introduction to see if people are interested in learning about the Commodore. Now, one of the things is when I finally do get into, if I get enough replies that people are interested in getting the Commodore at this point, the only problem is on my Commodore I noticed that the 3 key here, I don't know if you can see this, but it comes off because it's missing a spring which needs to be attached to keep from popping back up so you can get the 3 output to the screen. So if I push mine on there, it kind of stays down because there's no spring to pull it back up when you hit it, because they're all operated by springs underneath. So if you pop off a key, you can kind of see that. But that's not one of the other things. One of the bigger issues is I noticed when I started, and I got this off of eBay. Unfortunately, I did part with my original Commodore 64. I know I told you earlier I didn't part with any of the software and any programs I ever wrote, but I did part with the original Commodore 64, so I had to purchase one several years ago. And this model that I got, unfortunately, it seems to have some kind of bad graphics chip. But I noticed there's some of my programs that they don't display the screens properly or something. So it was kind of a little frustrating, and I just kind of decided to go with the Atari in that direction for a while. Until I started getting inspired by other people's videos, of course. So let's move on to the next thing I wanted to show you. I'm going to kind of tilt the camera here again. I think it probably gives people a better view than trying to me holding up a book and making my hands hurt a lot. So I have to turn this one around backward. This is the map of the Commodore 64. This, if you've seen my Atari videos, I'm going to kind of compare these side by side. No pun intended, guys, but this is the map in the Atari and the map in the Commodore 64. These are one and the same. Basically, they both have access to what's called address processing on your computer, which allows you to use addressing that can directly communicate to programs in BASIC and assembly language. I'm not going to try to open them up side by side. I just wanted to make that illustrated point there. I'm not going to review the whole book, but addressing basically is a number between 0 to 65 by 36, which represents the 64-bit or 8-bit processors that they had in those days. And the addressings would refer to different things in the computer, such as the graphics, the sound, and I/O and stuff like that. Basically, anything that you need to run and build a computer program with, from BASIC to assembly language. A lot of your internal components of the Commodore are stored in what's called ROM, read-only memory, and you can actually peek into these locations and see what's actually going on in ROM. Now there's also RAM, which is random access memory, and it allows you to go in, and basic programs can overwrite memory and stuff like that. So RAM allows you to write, which basically means random access. So you can basically pick up the the data and change it as you will. And the reason I'm stating that is because if you want to poke into an address here, as long as it's stored in RAM, you can easily write over that values. And I'd probably go into more detail on that later if you guys are interested in learning about, you know, the programming. So I do have the books and the materials for it. You can obviously get these online too, but, you know, having the book is more handy because instantly you can pick it up and look at it. Now this one also does have an appendix section here. Let's see here, and it shows you some of the character sets I was talking about earlier and how you can access the what's known as the AXI character set. I noticed I had one of my programs in here for something. It must have been one of my Commodore designs. And here's some of the screen codes. Again, it's not a complete review here to go over everything, but the AXI characters are all those characters you've seen earlier I was showing you underneath the keyboard that were accessed by pressing the shift or the, I believe it was the control key, to be able to see what's going on with that code and what kind of display output you're going to get. And if you put these side by side, you could build designs in those days and everything else. Okay, I did mention this one earlier. This is the GOS operating system. And this is probably where my knowledge kind of breaks off, because I didn't have a lot of knowledge with GOS since I mostly focused on regular basic and assembly language and didn't try to get into like taking apart third-party systems and stuff like that. But this book is pretty nice because it does have an addressing system built for GOS where you can go in and see what's going on with the processing for that GUI interface, such as the mouse and whatever is seen here. I can't read it upside down, obviously. So, but that's what this book does. Now, I mentioned I have knowledge of basic and background in assembly. So this book would probably be of interest to you too. It's called Computes Machine Language Routines for the Commodore 64. And I took some time to kind of reviewing this before and found some pretty nifty programs. There's some utilities in here, and for those who are interested in games, yes, there's games in here as well too. So I know because I'm a game fanatic myself. And here's some of the more advanced programs, which are, when I say advanced, they're usually longer in that aspect. Notice that this has type in lines and lines of numbers. These basically transmit into assembly language. And I think that's how they kind of comprise this whole book toward the end. Maybe in just various aspects of it. But yeah, this book is pretty cool too, and it even breaks down in the back here, and it shows you, I wanted to pull this other book out here. This is the machine language for beginners, because it shows you the opcodes and stuff that is required to be able to output a single assembly language instruction, which is what this book is really handy for. If you want to learn assembly, definitely recommend this book to you. So I wanted to kind of leave that out there. So, but it's got that in it, so it's a pretty good book. I got it on eBay. So let's see what else is in here. I think this is a breakdown of the hexadecimal addresses, probably the more important ones or something. Looks like they're in order, so maybe they're just showing you the ordered pattern of them. So that's one of the other books. Obviously, one of the main books you'll want for your Commodore 64, I have my old version, and this is what I got on eBay, is a user's manual. Or they actually call it the system guide here. The user's manual itself is very essential to a person wanting to know, first of all, how to turn on their computer. Second of all, what can I do with my computer? And this kind of gives you an introduction to the computer, breaks everything down step by step here, setting up the computer, you know, plugging in the computer and stuff like that. And once you get past all that, you get into the fun stuff, which I like to call fun, which is the basic programming and learning about how to get your computer to issue commands at your, or instructions, a set of instructions, so that you can get a task going on your computer. And if you're a gamer, like to eventually create your own games and stuff like that. And then it goes into an advanced, this one has actually an advanced basic programming. I don't know how advanced this one is, I'd have to look at it. I never really probably played with this much. I was more of a fanatic over assembly than anything else, so when they say advanced, I don't follow along with that, because I like the assembly language kind of stuff. This one looks like it has some kind of a, let's see that there, what is that, some kind of music program or something? And you can get these online, and maybe I'll post the PDFs if I get some interest in this. I'm just kind of scanning and skimming through this one. So here's some interesting stuff here. Let's skip back here a little bit. I'm going to kind of go back here to the first part. Maybe back a little bit further. I know it's just here a second ago. Where's the front title here? So graphics, color, and sprites. This teaches you how to create a sprite on the Commodore 64 system. And you basically manipulate a set of graphic design, basically, where you could basically you could draw whatever you wanted inside this area, and the computer would put it together on the screen. Now this was obviously different than the Atari. The Atari was like 16 by 16, and this one actually went larger, which is how I think they were able to create the multicolor effect, which means putting a sprite side by side and changing the digits to basically manipulate multicolor and stuff like that. So I wanted to show you that because that's, you see what's going on right here. Basically, this person has drawn a little happy face there and kind of set up their first sprite program. So the sprites can be animated. This was really cool about the Commodore. They had ways of going in and changing basically the frame rate, where you could instantly move from one frame to the next instead of having to redraw it like you have to do on the Atari. Because you have to actually set it up in a string character set on the Atari just to get the animation to show up. It's a little more complicated, but it was a very good system. And this one shows you all the commands here. These are all the instructions that you could use with your computer. Like I said, if you're really interested, I'll go into more in-depth detail about this stuff later. I wrote a lot of software in those days. I even had one game submitted to a company called Lodestar, which you guys might have heard of. And it was a program called Quest for the Mad Bomber. It was a text adventure back in the days. I got $350 for it, but I kind of had to kick them around a little bit to get them to take me serious on it. So this goes into the back here. I know I'm going through this really fast, so excuse me on it. The very back here, you'll see some of the controls you can use to access these characters. I think I kind of showed you that in the other one here, but this is a little bit more of a display here. It's cool. It even shows you like the scales here for musical notes, where you can go in and access that individual scale. Record if you would, if you were a guitar player, which I like guitar. And of course, here's the chords and the keys, or the key notes on the keyboard here. So it was a sound processing system, so it held a really good market for musicians at that time. So this book's probably pretty similar. I never really looked in this one. It's obviously a lot more cleaner than the other one, but it wasn't this is different though. It's just showing the cassette recorder. And I do have one of these actually in possession, but I don't have it here with me right now. I didn't think of it, but the cassette recorder would obviously allow you to record things on a mini cassette, or a regular cassette in those, standard cassette in those days. But obviously I never started with the cassette recorder. I already had a disk drive when it first came out. So this one's kind of very similar in contrast. It might have a few different programs. I like the way they instantly put out the commands, so that's kind of neat. They kind of changed their style later. This is, I think, is a newer book than the other one. So here's some other programs they have probably for different things here. But I'm sure you can get this one online too. This is not a review of books. Here's a screen map, memory map, the color memory map. I could go into more detail about that later too. Basically, you're accessing an underlayer by peeking, poking it, and you could change the coloring system to allow that to display in your text and stuff like that. And again, this is not a basic programming example, so it's kind of an everything guide to the Commodore and seeing if people are interested in moving forward with it. Now this next one, very importantly, last but not least, is obviously the Commodore 1541 User's Guide, which obviously allows you to access the internal components either sequentially or randomly from the disk drive. This one's going to be a little bit harder to hold open. This is more of a better book. And it shows you some of the stuff I kind of went over here, and probably some more of the technical aspects, especially what that other area really did there. And I'll be learning too is with you as you go along, because I was not a total expert on the Commodore 64. Like I stated, I kind of put it off for that reason, but we're here to learn, right? Okay, so this one, this is how you access it. It shows you how to access the directory and stuff like that, and I can go into all that when I get live programs up on the screen if you're interested. So I know you're not going to be able to see this very good, but we're not here to read the book. I'm just kind of reviewing it for you. So it had its own kind of processing where you could read and upload files to your computer. This is where even before databases were in existence, the people would basically store data on disks. Those disks I showed you earlier, the 5 1/4 inch, and they could read off their data, like their customer list or whatever, by accessing these open and close commands within the disk drive. I did that with my text adventure, where I actually stored data on a disk and you could just read it back off too, which basically saved the contents of the game. So that's basically what this one is all about. And at the back here, it gives you some of the error messages, gives you some of the how to track processing. This one's kind of good. It goes into technical detail, better than the one I used to own. But it shows you how the tracks actually work on the disk drive and stuff like that. I was no expert on all this stuff, but I'm definitely interested in, you know, moving forward if you guys are. So that's probably basically it here. I don't really see anything else I could really go into detail about at this time, but yeah, just let me know if you're interested in kind of getting my Commodore out on the scene here and introducing some of the software and stuff that I learned in those days, and kind of bring that to the table here for you. Now at the same time, I'm also updating, we got back into updating my website, so I'm going to be pretty busy with that, and possibly waiting on a job very soon here. So thanks for watching.